Okay, you should be able to see my screen now. Excellent. Okay, so we'll take a look straight away at some of the improvements to the user interface that SolidWorks has brought in. One of those is the R key on the keyboard. This always used to bring up the recent documents, but what we find now is that we get the ability to push pin recent documents. So if you've got something that you're working on regularly, you can pin that onto the list or some useful file that you want to access frequently. We can also show that in the folder that it's contained within. So if you want to search for multiple documents and you know they're in the same folder, you can open them from this recent documents menu, which is really helpful. That is also listed on your file menu as well. You'll see here that I've pinned some of the documents that I'm going to be using, but we can very easily just push a pin and it will appear on this sort of stuck list, if you like, and then you just unpush the pin to get rid of those. So I'm going to go ahead and open one of the files from here, and we'll take a look at some other improvements. One of those is a little bit of functionality that Windows has had for a long time, and that's the Control A select all command. So now in SolidWorks I can hold down Control and press A and it will select everything on the screen. Now this is a little bit more functional than just selecting all the parts of an assembly. If I open this part here, you'll see that I can pick a vertex and hold down Control A and it will pick all the vertexes. So it is context sensitive. Edges, again, we can select all the edges, faces, and it even goes as deep as to go right down to sketch level as well. So if we just make ourselves normal to here, I can select a dimension and hit Control A and it will select all the dimensions. So, you know, something that's very useful to all of us that's been brought across from Windows. Okay, so if I switch back to my assembly here, we're going to take a look at something that's quite difficult for me to show, but if you do run multiple monitors you'll see this straight away. Up on the upper right hand corner we've now got some additional tile left and tile right icons which enable us to sort of position certain documents to the left or the right of SolidWorks by clicking those. When you run multiple monitors there's actually a button that allows you to span SolidWorks across both monitors, and then using tile left and right will pick either your left and right hand screen. So that's quite nice for multiple monitor support there. One of the other things I want to show you is something that came in a couple of releases ago, which is mouse gestures. It's a really nice way to sort of speed up your working practice. The S key is another great example of that. But one thing that wasn't included with mouse gestures is the ability to add OK and cancel, which we can now include. So we can add those to part assembly and drawing and sketch modal mouse gestures, and they are just a right click and we can do various different commands. Mine are actually set up for view modes, but you can choose to set those up how you want. But they are a good way of speeding things up. If we take a look at another improvement, which is within the section view command, you'll see here I've got a section cut. It's actually quite difficult to see which are the cut faces and which aren't. So what we can now do is retain the cap color that's specified when we actually create the section view. So if you toggle on keep cap color, we can retain that information. You'll see here that it becomes a little bit clearer now for somebody who's viewing this document to see whether or which faces are cut. Another good visualization improvement is the addition of ambient occlusion in all view modes. So those of you who use PhotoView 360 or apply scenes to your SolidWorks model will know there was one called ambient occlusion. That was only on a particular scene that's just there, but we can now apply that in any view mode. So I can turn on ambient occlusion, and we'll see on this particular model that it makes it look a lot more realistic. All it's doing is just allowing the parts to sort of cast a shadow on themselves, if you like, but it just does give a bit more depth to the image. This is available for people who don't have PhotoView 360 as well, so your screen images can look a lot more realistic. Okay, so I'll just turn that off and we'll just switch back over to the part document here and take a look at one of the other productivity improvements that we've had, and that's the ability to switch units on the fly with the new unit switcher. So if I just go into this sketch here, you'll see at the moment my document units are set to IPS, it says just down the bottom here, but I can now just click on this and change it to millimeters right from that bottom menu bar there. If we go back into the sketch now, you'll see my dimensions have converted over to millimeters. Even if you don't use the unit switcher, it's a great way to get to the document units and adjust precision. You know, if you're working on a particularly accurate model, something like that, it's a very nice way to get there. Or even just to get into the system options, it's a nice shortcut to get there as well. Okay, so we'll exit that sketch and we'll just return to our assembly. And another tool that I've actually found quite useful in the past few weeks is the command search that's now available up in the top right. For those of you who aren't aware, we can actually search quite a lot of things from this bar at the top here. We can search the help file, the knowledge base, the community forums, also for files and models as well, but we can now search for commands. So if I type in whole here, it will show me all the commands at assembly level that relate to wholes. So for example, hole alignment, I can click on that. It will start the command for me. You'll see the property managers open on the right hand side. Or alternatively, if we just run the same search again, I can actually drag this out and apply it to my toolbar if I want to include it on a particular toolbar, or even click the little glasses here and it will take me to the right toolbar, point an arrow at it, and it places my cursor directly over it as well, which is quite nice. So all I need to do there is click and start the tool. So that's really good. One other thing just to finish us off on this section is the ability to add blank custom properties. This is something that we haven't been able to do before, but I can now create a new property, let's say check by, and often when you're creating these in a template you'd put something like NA just to make sure that the property was added, but I can actually leave that blank now, exit out of the property manager there, go back into it, and you'll see that that is still retained. So you can now concentrate on getting blank properties into your part templates. So I'll just close all these documents down and we'll take a look at some improvements at sketch level. So again, using my sort of pinned documents there, I can open things very quickly. So we've got a cylindrical component here, and I'm just going to go ahead and edit the sketch and just finishing off dimensioning that. We've seen some improvements to the Smart Dimension tool for cylindrical components. I can now select an edge that I want to dimension and a center line, and what it will do is it will retain that center line pick that I've got. You'll see my cursor has actually changed now and given me a center line symbol and a D. All that means is that it's retaining the center line that I've selected, so I only need to pick the entities that I want to dimension. So I can very quickly go through this cylindrical part here and dimension areas of interest to me. If I zoom in on this area as well, I can actually just pick without worrying about zooming in and out, and again place these dimensions. It does mean that we've got a lot less mouse travel. We've also got the ability to stay zoomed in and apply these dimensions, and hopefully it should just make life a little bit easier for dimensioning these kind of components. It is a modal tool as well, so if I pick another entity, you'll see that it deselects the center line, and I've now got the ability to use the dimension tool as I would. Another enhancement, again quite a useful one really, is sort of a change in how the escape key functions. I've picked an edge here and a vertex to put a dimension on, but that's not actually how I want to control it. So in previous versions, if I hit escape, the dimension tool would be exited, but now it just takes me back one step and allows me to pick another reference and stay in the dimension tool. So that does mean that things happen a lot quicker. It's just a nice change that should be useful for everybody. If we just go ahead now and revolve this component, we'll take a look at one of the other changes. And again, this is a nice productivity gain. It's a system option, so you can turn this on or off as you require. But I can now set this system option so that when I start a sketch, it automatically orientates me normal to that sketch. So instead of me having to press normal to or navigate around the model, it will automatically do that, as it does anyway for the first sketch in a component. If I start a circle here, I'll show you one of the other things that we've got, which is we've always had the ability to sort of apply dimensions on the fly when we're sketching, but that's now, those options are now available from a right click. So you'll see here I can turn numeric input on and add dimension on, or toggle those off as I see fit. Whilst we're on the right click here, if you do install 2012 and do a right click, you may find that this menu looks a lot bigger than mine does. That's because they've included a lot more options on the right click. But this is fully customizable, so you can choose what you show and what you don't show. So very much like your S key, you can customize this to include sketch tools that you use often or not. It depends whether you want those on there. Okay, one thing that you won't notice, but is a sort of subtle improvement, more for visualization purposes than anything else, is that the sketches and dimensions are now anti-aliased, so they will display, their visual display will be a lot better, but it's not something that we can see without a direct comparison. Okay, we'll just exit that sketch. You'll see when we exit a sketch, because it's made as normal to, it will return us to the zoom and rotation state that we were in previous to us going normal to. Okay, so I'll close that document down, and again we'll take a look at another improvement which relates to multi-body solids this time. We do find on technical support that we have a lot of people who sort of model with structural members, weldments, sheet metal parts, and the last few releases have seen some nice improvements that enable us to model those type of components all within the same part file. However, it's always been quite difficult to detail those out in a drawing. We haven't had the ability to create exploded views easily. There's a couple of workarounds for this. But in 2012, we've now got the ability to create exploded views for multi-body solids. So very much like the assembly exploded view, we can just create that from the configurations manager on a right click. I'll just put myself into a front view here, and I'm going to window round certain components. Again, the workflow is the same as at assembly level. We just window round, select a direction, and then drag. I can do the same on the opposite side and move this one out here. All the same options are here as well, so if I select these three components and then toggle on auto space solid bodies after dragging, I can just lift those up and that will automatically space them for me as well. Collapse is available hopefully from a right click. I think you have to right click over here and collapse, which will take us back to where we were before. Obviously we can edit that at any time by just editing, which is great, no problem at all. Another improvement to multi-body solids is with respect to sub-weldment. So here I've got a sub-weldment on the left hand side. I'm going to insert that into a new part just to make life easy for me. I'm going to cancel that. The properties between the two files are now copied from one to another. So previous to 2012, those properties wouldn't come across because we have stock bodies inserted into this file. But what I'll do is I'll just tile these windows so that we can see. So I'm making use of those new buttons. Over on the left hand side here, I'm going to just go into this sub-weldment and pick the structural member around the outside and view the properties of it. So you'll see that we've got a cut length of 2611, we've got the structural member property and the material. If we now go over to the sub-weldment we created and look at the same item, you'll see the same properties exist and they carry this link to parent sort of expression here. So just to sort of highlight that that works, if we come back to our parent file and I'm going to make a change to this 600mm dimension to 500mm, and we'll just rebuild that. And what we'll do is we'll then go into our sub-weldment component and we'll check the properties to see that they have changed. So if we go into properties, we'll see not at the moment, we may need to just rebuild that there. So we'll just rebuild that, go back into the properties. We might need to rebuild over here actually. Just double check that. Yeah, so we've got 2411 over there, and then if we come over to this side here, we've got 2411.24. So there is a parametric link between those two as well, which is good, because if you do create those sub-weldment parts, the last thing you want to be doing is chasing round references. Okay, we'll just go and open the part drawing for this, and what you'll see is that the exploded views are supported in drawings. There's a couple of changes here as well. On a right click we can now access exploded state. You'll see that it's also available from the top of the property manager for the drawing views as well, which is quite a nice thing. We don't have to go into the properties individually and do that. Okay, we'll just shut those documents down, and again we'll take a look at another little bit here, which is on equations. It's not something we see a huge amount of use on, but it can be very useful if you're making a lot of changes to components very quickly, or you want to build intelligent parts. In previous versions of SolidWorks there was sort of 3 options for equations, but they've now been merged into one manage equation option, which is really good. So there's 3 sort of view styles in here which we'll run through very quickly. The first one is what we call the equation view, and that shows us any global variables, features that are driven by equations, or any dimensions that are controlled by equations. You'll see we've also got a warning on that, but we'll look at that in a moment. The next view we've got is dimension view. This shows us every dimension that we've got in our model. And then we also have ordered view, which shows us the order in which the equations are going to solve. So, you know, if you're good with your equations, you'll see that this dimension solves after it's used in another equation, hence the reason for the warning. But if we're not that eagle-eyed, we can actually turn on the automatic solve order here, and SolidWorks will reorganize the equations in the best way that it can to make them solve more appropriately. So we'll leave that option on, and we'll just go back over to our equation view here. What I'm going to do is add a new global variable. Some of you may have used link values before, and in 2012 you'll notice you're not allowed to actually create any more link values, but you can maintain originals. What we really need to do now is create these global variables. So I'm going to create a global variable called overall length, and I'm going to give that a value of 75 millimeters, like so. So I've now got that stored in there. What I also want to do is add another equation to a particular dimension. I want to control this depth dimension here, so all I need to do is pick it from the graphics area. I want to link it to the global variable I've just created, so you'll see we can grab that from this window here and say overall length, and that is going to be minus a certain distance. I actually want it to be the distance between this face and this face, but I don't have that dimension. So what I can do is use the measure option here. Before I do that, you'll see we've got another couple of options here. We could link to a function, a file property, but in our situation we're going to use this new measure tool. So I can click that and select the faces I want to measure between. It creates me a reference dimension, so a a driven dimension, which it uses in the equation. So now if I click for that to evaluate, you'll see that defaults or evaluates to 60 millimeters. The part hasn't rebuilt, but I can just rebuild it from here and see that change, or I can leave automatic rebuild on. I'm actually going to leave that off because I want to be in control of those rebuilds. So if we exit out of the equation property manager, there's just one other thing that I want to show you as well, and that is I'm going to add another equation to control the spacing. But before I do that, there's quite a nice new option here for naming dimensions at sketch level. You'll see here I'm in the modify box. I can now click in the name of that dimension. I can name this on the fly, so I'm going to call this width, like so, and you'll see that renames that dimension for me. What I want to do is build an equation that controls the spacing here, so I want that to be equally spaced based on the width. So I'm going to double click on this dimension. I can change that if I want to, but Also, I can just type equals and the software now knows that I'm going to be starting an equation. Now, I've got this one written down, so I'm just going to move this box out of the way, but what I want to do is control this via the width less 2 offsets, which we've got here. So that's offset times 2, so we'll just put in times 2, close the brackets, and that's going to be divided by the quantity of holes. So we'll put that in, but that's -1 because we've already got one. Close that off, and if we click the green tick, you'll see SolidWorks gives us should give us the evaluated value there, if that's correct, which it doesn't look like it is. So we'll just double check that. Should be right, 52.5, there we go. So because I'm in charge of rebuilds, all I need to do is hold down Control and press Q, and if we use a little bit of instant 3D here, I can just actually grab hold of that edge and resize it, and you'll see the equation is constantly adjusting. But you know, it's a really nice sort of way to create those equations on the fly. You might decide you want to do that and then just create it in that modify window. Okay, we'll just shut that down and we'll take a look at some improvements at drawing level now. So I'll open up the drawing here and we'll take a very sort of quick look. I went to a customer site the other day and they didn't realise that you could actually open the part file from drawing level, but most people, you know, that's been there for a little while, but that system has now been improved as well. We can not only open the part, but we can also open the sub-assembly or the top level assembly directly from the drawing as well. I'm going to open the sub-assembly and we'll take a look at this sub-assembly. Now, changes to designs are a very common thing. You know, you're consistently going through a process of change, and we try and manage those in a variety of different ways. But another way we can sort of do that is new to 2012. So I'm going to make a change to this 80mm dimension. I'm going to make it 75, and we'll just rebuild that. And then what I'll do is I will open the drawing for this particular assembly. Now what you'll notice is on one of the views here that the dimensions update to reflect the change, but they also change colour. So what we can do now is set an option whereby changed dimensions will appear in a particular colour. It goes a little bit further than this as well. We can actually hover over these dimensions now and see what their previous values were. So sort of keeping track of changes is quite a lot easier now with 2012 because of this option. Something else that's been made easier is the addition of adding center marks to views. We can do that from the S key, as we always have been able to, but we can now decide what we want to apply center marks to. So just for holes here, I can apply those on very quickly. I don't have to delete any extra ones or anything else like that. I don't know if many of you use this, but the view palette over on the right hand side has been updated for 2012 as well. This is now an on-demand regeneration. So what that means is it's just saving a little bit of resource. It's not constantly rebuilding to reflect new views in your assembly model. We now do this on demand. So I need to click the refresh button and you'll see that's repopulated with some views that were added. Isometric exploded views are added by default now when you have an exploded view in your model. So I'm just going to use that, drag that out onto my drawing view. We've already seen as well that on the right click we can grab show in an unexploded state as well. What I want to do for that is add a bill of materials, so I'll just do that and we'll take a look at another improvement in drawings which relates to balloons and something that's been called magnet lines. This has actually been taken from 3D Beer, another software that is developed by SolidWorks, and it's quite a nice addition actually. So we'll go ahead and we'll auto balloon this drawing view. So I'm going to grab auto balloon here and apply those balloons. Before we do delve in and look at those magnet lines, there's just another quick thing I want to show you. We can now reorganize balloons sequentially. So I can tell the software to order my balloons from top to bottom. So if I click this button, you'll see it now starts my numbering at 1. It also restructures the bill of materials to reflect that. We can even go in and select the first item. So I might want this to be my first item, and you'll see the balloons follow down in that sequential order. We can turn this back and say follow assembly order, which will restructure the bill of materials to reflect the order in the assembly. Okay, if we take a look at these magnet lines now, you'll see I've got 3 balloons down the bottom here. If I click on one of these balloons, I'm just going to move this up so we can see it. You'll see it's attached to a line, and this is the magnet line. I can set the spacing there to be equal, but what I can do is manipulate this around really, really easily, reposition my balloons and just make things a lot easier to organise. We can set those to predefined angles as well, but you'll find they create automatically. If you want to add them manually, you can just create a magnet line very simply, and we can go ahead and drag things to that magnet line. You'll see here I'm just dragging a number of balloons to that. So, have a look at that. That is quite a useful tool. A lot of people find that very good. Okay, another thing that hopefully most of you should find useful is the ability to reuse letters from deleted drawing views. You'll see here that we've got section BB. Historically there will have been an AA or a detail view A somewhere, but it's been deleted. If I now create a new drawing view, so I'm going to create a new detail view here, the software is actually going to reuse the letter A, and it just means that we don't have to go back in and rename it if we want to use it. The software is doing that automatically, which is very useful. Another improvement that we've seen for 2012 is the ability to add bill of materials without selecting a drawing view. So here I'm going to add a bill of materials. It still asks me to select a drawing view, but what I can do now is pick one of those off a completely separate sheet and add it in very quickly. So previous to 2012 we would have had to create that drawing view and then drag it from one sheet to another, but we no longer have to do that. Whilst we're on tables, I'm just going to insert another drawing view here. So we'll just get one of those in, and this is for a sheet metal part. I'm just going to bring on the flat pattern, and we'll place that down when it's loaded up. It's just got to generate that flat pattern for us. Okay, so we'll place that down. One thing that I do want to show you is something called bend tables. I'm just going to view the sketches so we can see the bend lines there. Underneath tables now, if we pre-select a sheet metal drawing view, we've now got the ability to add bend and punch tables. So if you do use punch tools, that's quite a useful way to categorise those, very much like a whole table does. On this particular sheet metal part we don't have any punches, so I'll show you the bend table. We'll just insert that in. It works very much in the same way as a whole table, but it's just a nice way for you to reflect to manufacturing what each bend is if you're not using bend notes. We can even reorder these bends as well. So you'll see A is down in the bottom right hand corner. I can actually drag A down and change its letter, and it will resequence everything for us. So we do get the ability to reorder those, which is really nice. Okay, that's sort of drawings finished. We'll take finally a look at assembly. So we'll just close all these documents down again, and we'll take a look at assemblies. Now, this message box that's on my screen is purposely there, but a lot of you will see this by accident if you're moving files around your system. An improvement for 2012 now relates to this exact message. So if you have moved components and they've been lost, if you say yes here, we can now pick a folder. So we'll just find that on my system here, which should be in here, and assemblies. We've got 2 folders, one called Missing Files 1 and Missing Files 2. The file I want is in Missing Files 1, so I'm going to select that folder and click Open. It finds that file and it's now missing another one. So I'm going to say yes, and that is in Missing Files 2. What you're not seeing here in the background is the fact that there's actually quite a few files that are missing in each of those folders. What SolidWorks does now when you select a folder is it adds that to the referenced file path so that any other files that are missing that are found in those folders will be opened automatically, which just means that you don't have to go through a string of adding these documents in, which does speed up things a lot. I suppose it depends on how much you move files around your system. So I'm just going to go in here and just access something else that has been an improvement in 2012, and that is the ability to edit flexible sub-assemblies and components. So you'll see here that this RAM has got a 41 dimension. If I just open that part, you'll see it's in the 200 stroke. So that's its last save configuration. I'm going to change that to the 400 stroke and save it. Okay, and then if we switch back, well, if we close that first, and we'll switch back to our assembly. So this is still referring to that previous configuration, but it's not the last saved configuration. If I now double click on any dimension, I can change this 41 to 55. In previous versions of SolidWorks we wouldn't have been able to do that. In 2012 you can. What you'll also notice as well, we'll just rebuild that, is that that's part of a flexible subassembly. Again, another limitation that was imposed on us in previous versions, that's been lifted now, so we can now edit flexible subassemblies in place. Something else that's been improved is SmartMates. We'll just drag one of these out. I don't know if many people use this, but it's quite a nice way to make components. But this whole sort of process has been refined now. If I drag, grab the wrong edge there, we'll just grab that edge. If I grab that now, what used to happen in previous versions is this component would move erratically around until you'd sort of settled on a position to mate it to. Now we get a very slow sort of movement, which just allows us to get the right selection, and then we can drop it down as we normally have done. So that's quite good. Another improvement here is relating to when we change documents. So here I've got a cutout. I'm just going to unsuppress that. So maybe I sort of make this change and I'm looking at the component, or I call somebody over and they say, oh, we can't do that, you know, you need to get rid of that. So I'm going to close that document down and I'm going to say no to save the changes. In previous versions of SolidWorks, that change would populate through to the assembly because the part file was loaded into memory. Now in 2012 we get the ability to keep or discard the change. So here I'm going to say discard, and you'll see that the assembly opens up with the component as it should be, as opposed to what was loaded into memory. Quite a nice improvement there. Finally, what I want to show you is what we call tab to hide. So now I can hover over components, click tab, and it will hide them. If I hold shift and tab, I can reinstate those hidden components. So very quickly I can go around assemblies and hide by clicking tab, or show by clicking shift and tab. It's just a really nice way to quickly hide components out of the way if you want to delve into the detail. Now there are numerous other improvements in 2012, I believe around 200. The easiest way for you to look at these is to go to the help file after installing 2012 and view the What's New PDF. There will be a couple of other of these webcasts that go through some other improvements, but for me today that's as much as we've got time for.